Okay then. Well, thanks for joining us. So if you can just tell us about your careers one by one, whoever wants to go first. There's no time limit on our side, but when you're both done, we'll ask you questions. Well, when you're all done, we'll ask questions afterwards, if that's okay.
Of course, of course. I'll start it off. My name is Ishmael Sweeney. I am a senior airman in the United States Air Force. I am a KC-10 boom operator. I've been a boom operator for about 4 years at this point. And I am also going to school while in the military, so that's a good thing. And just waiting to see what happens with, the KC-10 and everything else.
What's your background?
My background, I am from New Jersey. I am from the other side of the United States. And I'm very glad to be here. The weather is a little better. And, I joined the Air Force a little bit late. Well, not a little bit late, but I was 25. So I made that decision to join. And I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all. I'm happy to be here.
Sweet. I'm Gabe Perez, KC-10 instructor pilot, about the same amount of time since January of 19, been flying the KC-10. Originally from Los Angeles, California, went to the Air Force Academy, and then graduated in 2017, went to pilot, and then, started flying KC-10 shortly after that. And we're all stationed in Northern California, Travis Air Force Base, if that wasn't clear, or if that hasn't been mentioned yet. So flown all over the world in the KC-10 and absolutely love this job. Over to you, Rob.
I'm Robert, KC-10 flight engineer for about 3 years. For 10 years. Before this, I was a engine technician. Love flying, originally from upstate New York. So school been on the other side of the country. But that's me.
Sweet. Did we lose Matt?
Yep, Matt's gone.
Oh. Matt, yeah. I guess we're in charge. No, just kidding. Who runs this? What is the chain of command?
Can you tell us a bit about your job, please?
Sure. I can go first on that. As far as a KC-10 instructor pilot or aircraft commander, my jobs are really to be in charge of the crew and make sure that execute the mission, whether that might be cargo, whether that might be air refueling, or both. There are certain types of missions where we can do both, and we call those dual role, where we'll take people, cargo, maintenance personnel for the airplanes that we're actually transporting and giving gas in the air. So that's kind of neat. So I'm looking at weather, I'll look at NOTAMs, I'll look at DIP clearances. So those are diplomatic clearances, since we're a military aircraft, and when we fly over international airspace, it's kind of scary. If I'm a military aircraft flying in another country's airspace without their permission, they'd probably be really mad at me. So got to make sure those are correct. There's certain clearance guide limits, and we call it the foreign clearance guide. And I have to check that, make sure that I am legally allowed and I'm following all of some countries more strict. During COVID, that was a big thing because every country was different. Along with those things, I am making sure with the people that are tasking the mission, whether or not that is home station or if that's Scott Air Force Base, which is AMC's headquarters, whether they're doing their job, if the tasking is legal, whether the tasking makes sense, not the things that they planned for us as goods, and that we're actually going to make it to our destination and not run out of gas. So along with that, just some other things that is just good AC-manship is making sure that when the crew lands, we have a place to stay at night. When the crew lands, we have a bus that's going to pick us up and all of our bags. Because if I have a crew of 6 and they bring a 6-pack van, that's not going to work if we all have our bags and stuff. So that's just some AC tip on trips, and then usually the co-pilot will delegate him, hey, find an activity for us tonight, a place to eat, and maybe an activity if we're going to be staying there a couple days. But that is really encompassing what an aircraft commander does on a day-to-day basis. And then as an instructor pilot, I do all of that and then teach people how to do that as well. So there's a level of letting people try to do that and then kind of being the guardrails, like, oh, sweet, you caught this, but you also missed this, this, and this. Here's a technique, or here's a way to remember all of the little things, all the minutia. And then as an aircraft commander as well, I forgot to mention that, and probably also touch on this, is I have to make sure that the aircraft itself is actually safe enough to fly. So I have to go through all the maintenance documentation and make sure that, okay, if we're missing this and missing this, can I legally go on this mission? And there are documents that help us make those decisions. So that's the aircraft commander and pilot world for the KC-10. So who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Sweet.
So I'm a flight engineer, a bit of an older career field. Not many of us exist anymore. Pretty much on jets that have us, we do a lot of what computers do on newer aircraft. So I manage the systems in flight. I operate the jet so that he can fly and that he can, refuel. I make sure the jet's operating correctly. I also calculate all the takeoff and landing data. So if we go somewhere, we need to figure out if we can land there, if we can take off. I'm the one that does all the math and the running charts to make sure that the aircraft can perform in a manner that we can get back off the ground. Another part of the job is just being a good in-between between maintenance and the crew. Just a lot of us have prior maintenance experience. So I know the lingo, I know aircraft pretty well, and I can translate that to layman's terms or stuff like that, just so we can all work together, be on the same page. But
A big part of his job too, and a reason why I'm really going to miss this jet, is the reading of checklists. And dude, you are like the hub in the cockpit. Like everything goes through him, and everything, like, he checks it and backs us up as well. So like I could be flying the aircraft and have something set wrong on the autopilot, and he could back me up with that. So I really appreciate that about our flight engineers. Go for it, Ish.
Well, they save the best for last. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
I am the boom operator on the KC-10, and essentially what I'm responsible for is aerial refueling, cargo loading, and passenger services, essentially. So make sure whatever aircraft that I'm responsible for refueling, I know what I'm refueling, I know when I'm supposed to be refueling it, and any other constraints that might go around that. And I'll usually get those from the aircraft commander. And in a lot of cases, the flight engineer, he's kind of, I'd call him the backbone, honestly. I mean, because if I'm back in the air refueling compartment and something weird happens or something goes wrong, the first person I'm running to and telling, over the headset is the flight engineer. So there's a lot of coordination and talking that we do, as a crew, just to understand what's going on at any given moment. And air refueling, I mean, is probably one of the best jobs, period. I mean, I get to look out of a nice window. I get to see a bunch of different views, snow, mountains, sand. I mean, you name it. It's really rewarding. It's really good. And I get to talk to the receiver aircraft that I'm giving fuel to. And they, I usually tell them, pretty bad dad jokes over the radios. So they kind of get upset with me. I'm just kidding. They don't get upset. But it's just a big part of the operation and being able to communicate. And that's just one aspect. The next part is, being proficient in cargo operation. And there's a lot of number crunching in that. And I coordinate again with the aircraft commander and with the flight engineer. So with the aircraft commander, if we're carrying some sort of hazardous material, he needs to know. He needs to know what's on the plane so that when we fly to certain places, he can tell, you know, whatever transportation agency that needs to be told about it, whether it's, you know, customs or something like that. Hey, we have this material on the jet, so we need preparation for when we land. Let's get this material off of the jet and where it's supposed to go. And when it comes to you know, conducting weight and balance procedure, I'm talking to the engineer. We're making sure that we're not going to flip the jet over, because that would be pretty catastrophic. So just like I said, communication, that's key for almost anything, but especially for us, we have to be kind of masters at it. And going into that, whenever we carry passengers, we could either carry, you know, civilian passengers, we could carry military passengers, and we take them all over the world. You know, Japan, Hawaii, places in Europe, of course, the Middle East. I mean, I've been all over, they've been all over, and we deal with a variety, and, you know, we get people where they need to go at the end of the day. I mean, we try to make sure everyone's safe, and we got a lot of subject matter expertise when it comes to that. So it's just a really rewarding job, and I couldn't do it without these two right here.
That's true.
That's true.
But I couldn't do my job without you either.
That is true.
So what I'm going to ask is, you can hear me clearly, yeah?
Yeah, we got you.
Yep, cool. So what I was going to ask, so obviously with the KC-10 obviously approaching its retirement, which is very sad, especially I love it. When I go to spotting at RF Milton Hall, I always look out for one that pops in now and then. 9 times out of 10 when I go there, there's not one there. It usually arrives when I leave. But with that in mind, then retiring, what are you three, what's your plans going to be? What are you going to do when, you know, that sort of finishes? Are you going to move on to another aircraft? Are you going to go civil? You know, all three of you, whoever wants to go first, just what are you going to do next?
Well, I still have 5.5 years on my contract, and I can go fly pretty much any aircraft that the Air Force needs me to fly. So I don't know yet exactly where I'm going to go. I know a lot of the instructor pilots from the KC-10 community are going to the new tanker to go fly it. But if, for example, I applied to go fly for presidential support, or if I applied to go fly C-12s in Alaska or anything like that, and I got accepted, that could be another opportunity for me to pursue. There's also non-flying opportunities out there for both officers and enlisted that we could take advantage of. So it's really up to the individual. I know that next year I'm probably going to be ready for an assignment, and I know that they are pushing me in the direction to go fly the 46, but I'm not sure yet. Nothing is promised, and everything that is promised could be taken away at a moment's notice. So it's just kind of the military, but I love it, and I know that the next job will be pretty amazing. What about you?
There's not many flight engineer airplanes left, but there's definitely opportunities for me to keep doing it. So that's my plan. I'm going to try and find a way to keep being a flight engineer, because for me personally, it's a great job. It's technical, and I get to fly, so it's fun. So
you could still fly the
C5, and that's
the G5.
Yeah, C5 and the G5 for the presidential support or executive support. Then there's little onesie twosies airplanes here and there that I could fly, but that's about it.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, for me, I'm looking to probably in the next year or so transition over to the Air Force Reserves component. So that would essentially be part-time military. And in that capacity, I'm probably looking to still remain a boom operator until the KC-46 is to arrive. at that point, I'm not too sure in terms of what my flying career would be in the Air Force, but I'm also planning on, finding another route in transportation by, I'm attempting to get hired by the Department of Transportation in California here, just because in general, I've always kind of been fascinated with transportation as a whole, whether it's in the air or on the ground or underground. And I'm trying to just kind of increase my level of subject matter expertise in that field. So I'm going to school for it now, and I'm looking to apply it in the civilian world, but still, be a member of the military through the reserves.
Nice.
Okay. So are you guys always together then as a crew? You always, or do you rotate like different pilots, or is it just you guys?
Oh, yeah, hard crew or not hard crew. Go for it.
Yeah, so for scheduling flights wise, it's just whoever fits in a flight will get in that flight. There's no real hard crews. So it's a fun part of the job is you can fly with a lot of different people. One of my favorite things about the KC-10 is our crew dynamic is a very tight crew dynamic, and we work very closely together. So you get to see a lot of different type of people, and you get to experience how different people work together. There are a few instances where we do hard crews, but usually if we're on a trip, that's about it. We're just with the one crew.
Yeah. It's true.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to ask a question, if I could, about a boom operator. Obviously, you seem to have, as far as a spotter will be concerned, probably the best seat in the house. Obviously, you've got a nice seat. You're sat refueling those aircraft. Obviously, a 135, they're in the prone position. Obviously, the KC-46, you've got TV screens. Is it quite a sought after role to get? Obviously, no, I know it's come out of service, but is it quite a sought after to be a boom operator, to be on the KC-10, because you've got that nice position and you're watching the aircraft you're refueling sort of with the eyeball and a nice comfortable seat?
I think the seat on the KC-10 is very unique in the sense that it is comfortable, but the longer you sit in the seat, you just kind of become a part of the seat in a way. And then when you stand up, you just, it's sometimes your back is forgiving, not all the time. But I don't envy it at all compared to the 135 boom operators, because I've actually been in a compartment once, and I don't think I'd be so comfortable in there. But it doesn't look bad. And I've also sat in a KC-46 seat in one of the simulators, and that's probably the most comfortable seat. But I think that as far as being able to look out of a window and physically see an aircraft, I don't think anything could beat that. And I've been on a KC-46 flight before where, of course, you're looking out of a monitor. It's not an actual window, and it probably would take some getting used to, adjusting to that change, because you can look out of a window and physically see an airplane there. So you can kind of have a real sense of where the aircraft is. And I think looking on a screen could be a little difficult at first, but of course, I think it's just a matter of habit and seeing it often and getting used to it. And I think it'll be the same just for the pilots when they have to do receiver work and they got to, learn again how to, get into the right position to make a contact on their end. So I think on both ends, it's I don't think it'll be that difficult. I think it'll be a small detail that just kind of has to get worked out through the kinks, and probably make some mistakes. That's just a part of the nature of being an aviator, but it comes with being willing to learn, having a willingness to learn and experience something new. And you can just say, you can have bragging rights almost, and be like, hey, I've looked out of a window and I've looked out of a screen and I've mastered both.
Thank you.
Sure.
Guys, would you mind telling us about any memorable missions that you've done that stick in your mind, or that was a bit dodgy, or
Oh, a bit
yeah,
dodgy.
probably lots.
Mhm.
We're all
I think,
Sorry, Matt, I took your question.
I think my most memorable would have to be the Afghanistan evacuation in 2021. 2021. We flew down. We were at Mildenhall and flew out of there to LED, picked up some refugees, flew them back to a couple different European countries to fly back to the United States for the refuge. So doing that and seeing a very direct impact of your actions with those people was very gratifying.
Cool.
Interesting. I'm a
Sure.
So my last operational mission that I was on was essentially, we called it the around the world trip. So we started, of course, here in Travis, California. We flew to Japan. After flying to Japan, originally we were supposed to go to Hawaii. We missed it, unfortunately. That's like my favorite place to go, but due to certain circumstances, we just skipped over Hawaii, went straight to Japan. And after Japan, we went to this tiny small island called Diego Garcia. And that, I've never been there before. It is really small, but when you get there and you land, it's like there's an entire community there. There's like a city almost. It's really strange. Everyone knows each other. There's beaches. There's a lot of mosquitoes though, unfortunately. But it's a nice place. After that, we went to the Middle East. We went to the Middle East because we were just taking some fighters. We were taking them from one place to another place to another place. Hit the Middle East. After that, we flew to Spangdahlem in Germany. Usually don't go there, but I went there and very green, very beautiful. The weather was a little chilly, but that's okay. That is okay. After that, we came back to America, landed in New Hampshire, and they gave us some pizza, so that was nice, after a long trip. And then we got a call from some people, okay, and they said, hey, we might need you to come back to the United Kingdom. We were like, oh, okay. But we didn't end up doing it, unfortunately. But that's the kind of thing that we experience from time to time. You might think you're going home on the 12th, but you might actually go home on the 21st. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to what needs to happen and when it needs to happen and who's in what place at what time. And there's a lot of logistics that go into it. Of course, resources, time management, schedule management. And we are kind of just masters of all of those domains when we need to be. And I mean, every day we come in to the squadron and, we're doing something operational. We're making something happen. But we didn't end up going to where we were going to go. I believe it was Scotland. We were supposed to go to Scotland, but unfortunately, we didn't go. We came back to Travis, and that was the end of that mission. But it was a 2-week around the world mission, and I'll never forget it. It had a great crew. We had some food, of course, great food, and we just had a good time, but we got the mission done.
Nice one. Thank you.
Oh, I got to think. I'm like, oof. I'll give you a dodgy one, and then I'll give you a cool one. They'll both be very short. For the mission that didn't go as planned, we were taking some fighters from California to Guam, and then we're taking a follow-on mission to go to the deployed location and do a tail swap because there was a jet that was deployed that was like really broken, needed to come home, and I was flying the jet that they wanted to subsequently deploy, and we were going to take the broke jet home. So we got the fighters to Hawaii. We got the fighters to Guam, and then the fighters were like, thanks, see you later. We're going to go to Japan now on our own with our own other tanker. We're like, great, we're going to stay in Guam. But before we landed in Guam, we didn't land at the Air Force Base because we got a phone call while we were flying to Guam and said, hey, you can't land at Guam because they don't have any ramp space for you. You won't be able to park anywhere. So you're going to go to the international airport in Guam, which, if you didn't know, Guam is super small. There's only 2 airports. So it's the only other piece of land I can land on. So we landed at the international airport, never done this before, never contacted anybody at an international airport, never been like parked up to a gate with like the whole, like the gate coming down and you could like walk off onto the walkway. Never done anything like that. I felt like I was working for United for a little bit. Everything was super smooth after that. It was just like unfamiliar for me. Normal night at Guam, normal wake up, get our food, we have our snacks, we're ready to go, and we get into the aircraft, and my flight engineer, not him, but another flight engineer at the time, said, we can't take off. And I was like, that is weird. Why? He's like, well, we need this much gas to make it to where we need to go, but we're only allowed to take off with this much weight. Yeah. So there was a hill that was right off the edge of the runway that we were using. And because of that hill, it reduced the amount of weight we were allowed to take off with. So then we're like, cool, we have this mission, but we can't take off because if we put on the gas that we need, we will hit the hill. But if we don't take off with the amount of gas that we need, we're never going to make it there. So it was just very awkward. So we had to come up with a hip pocket decision of like, okay, cool. We're going to go to Singapore because we go to Singapore like all the time, or at least we used to. So we call Singapore, and Singapore goes, hey, great, thanks for calling. We'd love to have you, except we're having an air show, so you can't land. We're like, dang it. Where else can we go? So we're just calling everyone. We're like, well, there's not really many other countries and airfields that we can go that way, except for Diego Garcia. And so we called Diego Garcia, and they're like, yeah, we got no one here. You can come and land.
Of course.
So 13 hours later, we made it to Diego Garcia. And then it was during COVID. So Diego Garcia was like, cool, put your mask on, go into this hotel room, shut your door, and never come out until the next day. And yeah, that was a not so great experience because COVID really dampened that. So I'm glad you got to enjoy the beaches because I did not. I got to see the inside of a hotel room. But hey, we finished the mission. We got to the deployment location. We were able to tail swap out, which was cool. The one that was super cool, and I really like this mission, I was deployed, and it was my second flight as an aircraft commander deployed ever. And it was not a normal deployment flight. They were like, hey, this B-52 from Louisiana is going to meet you in the Middle East, and you're going to give him gas. And they were like, he's going to be at this altitude, at this time, and at this point, make it happen. And so we plugged that all up into our box, and the calculator in the box and the aircraft told us, cool, you need to take off at this time, and you need this much gas. We're like, cool, we got it all. We're ready to go. Mission planning complete. And yeah, 2 ship KC-10s. So we're in formation. We met the B-52. We both gave him gas, and he was able to fly around the Middle East and then fly all the way back. And a super cool part of that mission is there was tankers from Mildenhall that gave him gas, and there was tankers from the Northeast, so New Hampshire, that gave him gas on the way there and on the way back. We were just kind of like the halfway point for his mission. So that man like probably flew like 36 hours at the end of the day. And that's a pretty incredible thing that I was able to be a part of. On top of that, there was 12 different countries that participated in this, and I had public affairs on board outside of our big window, and they were taking pictures of the B-52, and there was other countries, air forces, airplanes that were coming and joining on to him, and they were taking pictures, and then they would leave and go back to their countries. So it's super cool to see that and to talk with all of those fighters, and all in just one mission. So it was very busy, like what, 4.5 hours for me. But it was super rewarding to see that. Yeah.
If you can describe you guys, the KC-10 in one word, what would it be?
Well, that's 2 words.
Gucci.
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 Yeah.
Gucci, and I'll explain why. There is another squadron with the call sign Gucci. There is a squadron that calls them the Gucci Boys, but that's not why. The KC-10 is it's a special breed. We're a very small community, so everyone knows each other, and it doesn't matter if you were flying a McGuire or if you're flying a Travis or you're deployed. You probably know or have heard of the name because there's such a limited amount of people who fly this jet, so it's a very tight-knit community. We only go to generally nice places because we're a very large aircraft. We generally don't get to go fly on dirt airstrips. So we get to go to nice places. So that's why we like to call it Gucci. And then we're super reliable. And we like rarely, I've been on a lot of trips and I don't break a lot. And that's really cool to see an aircraft this old do so well in its old age. So super reliable, and it does such a cool mission set. And we're the most #1 requested air refueling asset like in the world. If someone wants to get somewhere, when I say someone, a fighter, a smaller aircraft wants to get somewhere, they're going to call the KC-10 first. And that's super cool to be a part of that.
The amount of receivers I've had that when they see it's a KC-10 they're getting gas from, they remark that they're excited that it's a KC-10 and not another tanker, because we're, like you said, really sought after asset.
Yeah.
KC-10 is a great plane.
Yeah.
I likes it.
It's a great plane. And it's almost surreal for me because I think when I was first coming in, young little airman, right? And I would tell people, hey, I'm about to go be a KC-10 boom operator. And they're looking at me like, you don't know how good you got it. You don't know how good you got it. Even when I was in boot camp, my military training instructor, my drill instructor, I told him that was my job. And he was like, you're lucky. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, maybe I shouldn't take it for granted. And maybe I should, study and really read and understand what it is I'm doing, because a lot of people they would kill to be where I am, and I'm grateful for it every day. And I really appreciate the people I'm surrounded with, and I would say Gucci is the word. Gucci is the word.
It's good. It's a good job.
Yeah.
That answers my question then.
Gucci.
Can I ask a question, guys? Can I ask a question? You still got this thing between the Navy with probe and drogue and you with booms. Now, I know the boom can do probe and drogue, but why is this? It still goes on, doesn't it? I know it's been going on for years, but I just wonder why it still goes on. It's still a thing. I know the Navy have to refuel helicopters and all this sort of thing, and because a boom is no good for that. But just your thoughts on it would be nice.
So, on why we use both.
Yeah, no, why the Navy does drogues.
Oh, the
and
Navy.
why we do boom. And sir, it's not just the Navy. A lot of our international partners prefer drogue. There's very there's very few countries that just use booms. Off the top of my head right now, I can just think, I know Australia has a boom because they have the A330. We have a boom.
I think Japan.
Yeah, I can't really think of many other countries. Now, I'm not the expert. That's 100% true. I'm definitely not the expert, and I'm not sure why they thought to go with instead of drogue. Go for it.
I know the Navy, I believe they have some, like almost like a pod on their F-18s. I think they use them for,
that's
where
true.
they can refuel off the carrier for a very small amount of gas, but they do have that capability. I think just for them, the probe and drogue is a more versatile method of air refueling. More people have it.
And you also have to think that the drogue doesn't need much operation sorry, how do I word that correctly? The drogue doesn't need a lot of control, right? So you have to control the boom,
Yes,
but the drogue, you just kind of hit the button and the drogue goes out.
right.
So
I would say that, because the drogue is not all the way connected to the aircraft in a way. The drogue can be disconnected from our aircraft if an event were to occur that it's wildly unstable and it could, detrimentally damage our aircraft or the receiver aircraft. So it's a little safer in a way. I mean, when it comes to the aircraft that do have a probe to connect to the drogue basket. And on my end, there's a little less input. I essentially just hit a switch and the drogue and hose, it just comes out. And as long as I just make sure it's operational and it works, that's all I'm doing. And I'm just observing, making sure everything's safe. With a boom, it's a little more technical, and I have way more control over the movements of the boom. I don't have any control over the movement of the drogue basket at all. If it just decides to fall off of the airplane, it's gone. But that would only be under some pretty dangerous circumstances. The boom, usually there's a lot more abnormal procedures that would go along with making sure that is where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah.
Good question. Not the expert.
You just answered one question I was going to ask, that you do have the KC-10s with the wingtip drogue units. Then you do, yeah. So as I understand, only 1/3 of the original fleet had them, I believe.
I believe that's correct.
That number sounds right.
28
Yeah.
of the 60, I think. Yeah. But you're saying about how popular it is, which raises the question: why is the KC-10 being retired before the KC-135?
Oh man,
It's a younger aircraft.
It is. It is.
And much
But
more capable.
You gotta think about this, and I'm definitely not the expert, and I wish I had better answers for you. There's only 60. There's only 60 of us, and there's 435 135s. So there's quite a difference in the numbers. So I mean, as far as numbers perspective, they only have to retire 60 of us versus retiring 400 of them. So that could be possibly it. We're sad to see the KC-10 go. We're excited to see the 46 and everything that it's going to do for us. But yeah, KC-10's it's a great aircraft, but our senior leaders have decided that this is the way of the future, and we trust them, and we 100% back them up and believe them, and we're gonna execute. And it sucks that the 10 has to go, and we're gonna miss it. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly the reasons. But yeah.
I've seen reports that it was because the KC-10 didn't receive the same level of upgrades of things like defensive aids as the KC-135.
Yeah, a lot of our aircraft, so even the C-17, even though it's a newer model, they're all getting renovated and they continually get updated. And the 10, I don't think got that because we knew we're getting rid of it. So it's like, why would we upgrade it if we know it's just going to go away? I personally prefer to have all of the equipment we have right now. It's really cool to walk into our aircraft because a lot of it is still steam gauges. A lot of it is not been updated with electronics. So it's kind of cool. You walk into like almost a museum, but it's super reliable. And it's really cool to fly like that. Yeah, I would say, keep digging in and reaching out to either public affairs for the Air Force or in your own research on Wikipedia or whatever websites that you're using. But those are the things that I know as far as the 10 going away and upgrades.
Yeah, it does sort of defy logic, even though, as you say, it is a small fleet. It's by the standards of pretty much every air force in the world, apart from the United States Air Force. That's a big fleet.
Oh, 60. Yeah, I
Yeah.
get that would be a pretty big Air Force if it was a different country. You're correct.
Yeah, that's 4 times the size of the RAF's tanker fleets.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. If we deploy all of them, we've got 14
Wow.
Voyagers.
Yeah, that is quite the difference.
Yes.
Man, I was going to say something.
Yes. But one comment on the design fights between Boom and Probe and Drogue. It's a bit like VHS and Betamax, I suppose, but it was because the strategic air command needed tankers that could pass a lot of fuel, and you can't pass a huge amount through a Probe and Drogue. So for the US Navy, fine. Fighters don't need that much fuel. B-52 needs a hell of a lot of fuel. And that I believe was the reason they went to 2 different ways.
Yeah, there is a quite a difference on the amount of fuel that can get pushed out per minute versus Drogan.
Yes.
That is correct. Yeah, I forgot to mention.
So 6 times faster.
Yeah.
For a boom.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So my question is, obviously you've been around the world, different places and that. So what's your favourite country you guys have visited, and one you've really enjoyed? Because when I first started these talks, we had one of the first ones was a Belgium Air Force C-130 crew. We had a pilot, I think it was a co-pilot, an engineer, and a loadmaster. And one of them said Poland because of the girls. And stuff like that, but the other one said here. The other one said because of the beer in another country. So, what would you say has been your favourite country that you guys have been on a bit of a little mission or whatever it is, and you've really enjoyed it?
For me, it's more of a chain of islands that's a part of a country, but the Azores are one of my favorite places I've been to. Just a really cool place, beautiful sunsets. And I've spent a lot of time in Mildenhall, so I like Mildenhall a lot. Yeah, I think I'm unlike these gentlemen, where I'm originally from the other KC-10 base, so I spent a lot of time in Europe, and I've actually yet to go to Asia and stuff like that. So,
You have one?
I think, kind of to what Sergeant Romano was saying, on Travis being a boom here, I got to go to more across the Pacific. So I think my favorite place was probably Japan. I think I've been able to go there a couple times. So the first time I went, it was COVID, so I couldn't really experience anything. I couldn't go to Tokyo, couldn't get on the bullet train. The second time I went, however, great time, had a really good time. We walked at least 15 miles somewhere in Japan. I don't know where we were, but we eventually made it to Tokyo, but it was probably one of the longest walks of my life. And I didn't understand anything. I was, didn't understand most of the things. I was able to just follow my Google Maps, and it took me and my crew where we needed to go. But I think it's just beautiful there. It's just beautiful there. The architecture, the nature, everything's beautiful. We were going to different restaurants, trying different food, sake, ramen, all the good stuff. But unfortunately, I've only gotten to go to Mildenhall once, and that was during COVID as well, so I couldn't really experience it much. But I want to go again and really experience it. So hopefully soon.
Recently, on a trip back from being deployed, I got to land in Prestwick, and I got to spend a lot of time in Prestwick because the jet broke in Prestwick. So I got to enjoy Glasgow and Edinburgh, and I think that was probably my favorite trip of all. I have a little bit of a biased opinion because everywhere I've gone in the KC-10 in my time has been through COVID. So a lot of my experiences have been land and go to your hotel room and just look inside of the hotel room. And so unfortunate, but I did get to experience Edinburgh and Glasgow and walk the streets and enjoy some scotch and buy some scotch and take it home and enjoy some cigars there. So I was really happy there. That was a really good time. So I also got to spend some time in Mildenhall, but again, COVID got me. I did get to do it once before COVID, and I've been to London and my whole crew had not. So I was like, let's go. So we did all the normal stuff, Buckingham Palace, Big Ben, the London Eye. So
That's cool.
yeah.
So cool. But on that note, I've always wondered this might be a bit of a peculiar question, but say you are going somewhere and the jet does break down, but you know it's going to be a few days. How does it go about hotels and stuff? I mean, how does it get booked? Who does all this? I mean, you know, because you've got to survive, eat and stuff. I mean, so when you go, right, this jet's not moving for a few days till we get this part down. So where does it all go from there? Who decides that, right, we're staying here, we're going out here, you know, and obviously, you know, you don't pay for it yourself, so you can't, obviously. You know, it's not your responsibility, is it? Or do you? Like, do you know what I mean? How does it all go?
Yeah, so it usually happens in the case where we broke in Prestwick, it was the aircraft commander with the whole crew kind of helping, because it was actually late at night when we had landed, and we're just calling all the hotels in Glasgow, hey, do you have room? Hey, do you have room? Hey, do you have room? And so as long as they're below the rate that the military says, hey, in a hotel in Glasgow, we'll pay this much. As long as it's below that rate, we can stay there. Every city in the whole world has a military rate that the military is willing to pay for. And we do not pay for it personally. We are given government travel cards, credit cards, that we're allowed to swipe for specific purchases. And those purchases are for room and board. Pretty much that's it. Maybe a taxi, maybe some parking fees, maybe a rental car if that is what the mission dictates that you need a rental car. There's very few times that we do need those, but usually up to the aircraft commander to decide. In that same trip where I broke in Prestwick, I changed hotels twice because the hotels we were staying at said, hey, sorry, you brought us a team of 16 people, but we've already booked our rooms for the next night, so you have to move. So we moved to another hotel. So we had to do that twice. And that is a common occurrence. That is not something that's out of the ordinary. I hear crews do it all the time everywhere.
Oh, so you don't just go on a session with the car then and have a few beers and stuff like that? No, okay, because I've always wondered that, because when you see aircraft land in different places and they go tech, I wondered how that sort of went, like how it sort of gets organised. But I noticed Ishmael, did I get that correct?
Yes.
Was pointing at you as the instructor pilot. So I'm guessing that the pilot does all that, then that's down to you to get the hotels and stuff.
It's definitely our responsibility to take care of the crew as the aircraft commander. And there are a few places in the world, most notably Guam and sometimes Hawaii. They will actually already have your hotel rooms booked when you land. But not everybody offers that. Also Ramstein, because Ramstein, there's a huge hotel right off of the runway. Like there's just this massive hotel. And so, yeah, you just show up and they're like, here's your rooms. But there's very few places do that.
So if you don't mind me asking, what actually went wrong with that KC-10 then?
Oh, sure. This was the trip. This is a nightmare. So we're deployed and we want to go home to Travis, California but there was a jet that belonged to the other KC-10 base, McGuire, that's in New Jersey. And so New Jersey wanted their jet back. So we had to fly their jet back home. There were no McGuire crews deployed because McGuire had stopped deploying people because they were transitioning to the 46. But yet there was a McGuire jet there. So first off, we're not even going to go home. We're going to go to McGuire. So that's kind of a nightmare. Like, I just want to go see my family, but I'm going to land in New Jersey and try to figure out my way to California. So that was a bummer. But then that jet flew a couple times, deployed, and the altimeter and the airspeed were breaking very badly and unable to be repaired in flight. It would just drop to 0. Which is not true. Like, if you're flying and your altimeter goes to 0, you're probably still flying, even though it says you're on ground level. Well, those two instruments we kind of need to fly. And then the other side, so the pilot side and the co-pilot side broke. So then maintenance was like, we've tried everything. We've tried swapping. We've tried pulling circuit breakers. We've tried, going behind the panel and seeing what's going on. And they had a workaround. And then they did a test flight just to make sure that it was good. So they flew it around the deployed location. They said, yep, your little workaround worked great. Let's sign this document. And we're saying, hey, you can fly this jet 2 times. You can fly it once to Prestwick and you can fly it once to New Jersey. That's it. Cool. Got it. We get all our stuff on the jet. We fly to Prestwick. I'm flying the approach. I'm in the right seat, co-pilot seat, but still acting as an aircraft commander, flying. And at about 4,000 feet, I lose my altimeter and I lose my airspeed. And my instructor pilot, who was in charge of the mission, saw it, and I looked back at him and he looked back at me, and I was like, we're stuck in Prestwick because it just broke again. So yeah, we landed fine. Everything was fine. It was visual. It actually eventually came back up around 3,000 feet, but we all saw it. It's like, it broke again. Like, we don't know what's going on. This gremlin that's in the jet. So yeah, we landed and then basically knew we were going to stay there a couple days and have to figure out whether or not we were going to get to go home or whether they were going to send maintenance personnel and we were going to stay with the jet. And they eventually let us go home because we were a deployed crew just trying to get home. And so they just released us. We left the jet there. We took all the things that we needed to get home. Like we didn't take all of our bags, but we took some of our bags and we left it on the jet. And later on, there was a maintenance crew that came out from New Jersey, repaired the jet. There was another crew that actually flew it home. Our stuff actually got picked up by a deployed crew that landed in Prestwick, but was going to Travis, and they got on the jet, they took our stuff and they put it on their jet and then they flew it home. So that was kind of a complicated, very complicated issue.
To your prior point about how small the community is.
Yeah.
I was in New Jersey at that point, still flying the 10 there, and I was scheduling the mission to go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, it happens.
Small world.
Very small.
Sounds like it's all fun and games.
Until it breaks. But that is one of the very few times I've broken. There's only another time that I broke. Oh wow, they've broken both in Milton and in England and Scotland. I have bad luck over there. I sat in Mildenhall for 5 days because we had a hydro system completely go out.
it's not a bad thing.
That's not a bad thing.
No.
That is not a bad
I
thing.
love Mildenhall.
I would staying in Mildenhall for 5 days. That's good. That's a good deal.
But I bet in honesty, when you do stay somewhere, I know obviously you want to get home, but at least you get to explore these places, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you know you're going to be there, like if they say like a, mechanic crew or technician crews come in, they're on their way, but they're not going to be there for a couple of days. You guys are not just going to sit and do nothing, are you? I bet you have a little wander around and see what's what.
Yeah. There was one time I wish I would have broken, but I didn't. And it's when I actually got to go to Japan and it wasn't COVID. but it was like a quick turn. It was like, you're gonna land, you're gonna eat, go immediately to sleep, and take off the next day. And we didn't break. And I was like, oh, I didn't get to see Japan.
That's not fun.
It's okay. It happens. I'll make it there eventually.
Do you guys ever refill the B2 spirits?
Capable of it. Have I done it?
I've done
No. Oh, you've done it? I haven't done
Yeah.
it.
I've never.
You've never done it?
I've done a B1 and a B52, but never a B2.
Yeah.
Actually, I have done it.
I've done B2s twice.
Nice. I did get, yeah, we do it.
Is something as flat looking as that easy to hook up to then for the boom guy?
I've never personally seen one, so I don't think it would be too uncomfortable. I do think it would be something new again, and I think, of course, I would seek the opinion of those who are a little more experienced than I am, and just get, you know, some techniques and obviously procedures, and just
Sure.
you know, just a little more someone who is comfortable, you know, and you know, they can kind of just give me what to look out for when I do that. But
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
it would work out. It would work.
Yeah, and regards to weather, what do you think? What would you say is the worst ever weather you've had to refuel any jet in? And it's had to be done, like, you know.
That's
The worst jet you've ever refueled.
No, the worst weather you've
Oh,
ever
the
had to refuel
weather.
jets.
Oh,
the worst
weather.
weather was probably when I was deployed, and it's usually at night. It's usually at night for me anyway. It was at nighttime, so it's a little harder to see at times, depending on what I have my lights set to. So, you know, you want to have them not too bright, because it could blind the other pilot and they won't be able to see much. But you don't want to have it too low either, because then they won't be able to see the plane at all. So figuring that out, on top of very turbulent weather, and sometimes there's lack of visibility as well. So a plane will be 50 feet back and I don't see it until they're 20 feet back, and then I'm like, oh, okay, you're right there. And then they're kind of bouncing in the envelope, is what we call it, the air refueling envelope. And I'm trying to extend the boom into the receptacle, and I'll be, you know, 2 feet away, and then the plane just goes over here. And I'm like, okay, well, now I gotta practice, get it in the right spot.
Yeah. What about thunderstorms? Have you ever had to refuel in that, or is that definitely a no-go?
It's usually not. It's usually not. We try to go around the thunderstorms, or you know, climb up or go down, just to avoid it, because it can get very dangerous very quick, and then we'll have to call our favorite word. We'll have to call a breakaway, and I don't like it.
No, I don't blame you.
Flying in thunderstorms in general is not a good thing. We try to avoid that. But I will say fighters try to avoid that way more than even I do. They not like thunderstorms. They like to see where they're going. They don't like to be in clouds even. But deployed is the thunderstorms out there are different creatures. They're huge, and it can get pretty dicey sometimes.
Yeah, my earlier on this year or last year, when the B-52s were deployed in at Fairford, they come right out, they've been out on a big sortie. They come over the top of my flat where I live. You know, I could hear them, that whining sound, you know, of the 8 engines. And just as they gone through here where I live, massive thunderstorms, and it was stretching right the way up over Fairford and Bryson. And a friend of mine who worked in the worked as an air traffic control assistant at Bryce, that took the pictures of all the fork lightning going everywhere. So the buffs had to go further up north over Hereford and Worcester way, circling for half an hour, 3/4 an hour, before they could get back down into Fairford, you know?
They're pretty
Yep.
intense.
Don't land in thunderstorms. Don't do it.
Yep.
Dicey.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
Can I ask like a bit of a technical question? When you're refueling some of the bigger aircraft like a C5 or a B-52, they have a bow wave in front of them that pushes your KC-10 about. How does the KC-10 react to such a big aircraft coming up behind it, and how do you compensate for that?
So on my end, I essentially have to compensate for it by anticipating the bow wave. So once they, usually with a C-17 or a C-5, once they hit about between 10 and 15 feet, I have to apply pressure onto the boom flight control stick, and I have to essentially kind of hold it in place so that it doesn't fly upward, because you don't want it to fly too far up, because you run into the problem of potentially hitting a limit, a structural limit. So you want to hold pressure downward so that when the bow wave does hit, that I'm anticipating it and the boom is where it needs to be. But I think for pilots, it might be a little different.
Yeah. As we refuel C5s and a little bit of C-17s, we talk about the seat of our pants when we're flying. It's just another way of saying, like, you feel it in the aircraft, like you can feel what's going on. When I refuel C5s, I can actually feel the aircraft. If this is forward and this is back and the C5 is kind of coming up on me, I can feel the aircraft kind of tilt like this. Kind of the C5 is pushing the tail up. And so I feel the autopilot kind of, hey, I need to put bunch of trim in. So it'll trim it out so that it becomes level again. If I'm not using the autopilot, and sometimes for training purposes, and if I need to, if our autopilot is broken, we have a technique that at every 10 feet, we actually add in a click of trim when we're doing larger receivers. So the boom would usually tell us, hey, he's at 50 feet, 40, click, 30, click, 20, click, 10, click. And that makes sure that while he's coming in and he's pushing my tail up, that I don't start descending, because if I start descending into him, we're going to have a bad day. So I'm clicking the trim ahead of time so that I stay straight and level the entire time. That's a good question. Good. Ooh.
Thank you. Are the big heavy aircraft the hardest to refuel, or is there anything harder that you've come across?
I think the hardest for me to refuel are the power limited receivers. So it's primarily a C-130 is probably the most difficult because they're slower. We're flying lower, so we're usually between 8,000, 12,000 feet doing a C-130. So just the aerodynamics up there are a little different because we're used to 25,000 feet, I'd say on average. So a C-130 is probably the most difficult just because of they can only go up so high and they can only fly so fast. So we have to slow down for them, and we got to get in the right position, and we got to meet them at the right place just to make it happen. And especially doing at night, that's where it gets very difficult, because then you have to turn your lighting down so that they could see. But it's really hard to see them sometimes. I don't see them until they're at like 20 feet. And it's kind of scary, but I'd say that's probably the most difficult.
Yeah. Is there one that's most difficult for you in your pumps?
Not really. Just how we do the pumps is we have 3 body tanks we offload through, 2 pumps a tank, and if anything, they're all pretty easy to manage for me.
Yeah.
Like just get gas off the jet. Just some are more work, like your single pump aircraft, smaller aircraft, drogue, F-16s usually limited to 1 pump, so that can be a bit slower. But yeah,
Yeah, it's all the same to you at that point.
it's just how fast it goes.
True.
Nice. Yeah, I'll agree and say the C-130 is probably the most difficult. That's my only real world breakaway. Oh, go for it.
Oh, and then yeah, C-130s I have more work because I have to get them speeds. Because
Oh,
usually
yeah.
for C-130s you have to go slow enough that we can't fly that clean wing.
Yeah.
And we need to slats out.
Yep.
Sometimes flaps. So
Yep.
I have to run some charts, and there's just more work.
Yeah. C-130s and KC-10s are not a match made in heaven, but we still make it work for them. We do have to descend, like you said, 10 to 15,000 is around where they like to air refuel. And as a pilot, it feels weird to fly your aircraft like this because you're flying so dang slow. And honestly, you're like that close to stall speed. And you're like, if we go any slower to try to help these guys out get in, like we are going to fall out of the sky. So that's C-130s.
Yes, it is.
If I
You
may ask
mentioned that-
Ishmael, sorry, Tony.
I was just going to say, if the C-130s are difficult, can you do any helicopters, or can you do the Osprey?
We can do
With
the
Broken Rogue, of course.
Yes to the Osprey, no to helicopters. I've never done a helicopter.
I've never. I don't think
I
so.
think they're just too fast for a helicopter.
Yeah, I thought it would be. Yeah.
And the helicopters will probably prefer and always request the C-130 model. There's an air refueling C-130 model that does that.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
yes, we've done Ospreys. It looks weird. It looks like it's gonna cut it off.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you were doing the job for Afghanistan a few years ago, the evacuation. Me and Clive and Dan, who are in this room here tonight, we were up at Mildenhall roughly around about this time when all that was going on at the end of August, and all through the night KC-10s kept coming in. How many times did you actually go in and out of there to go down into Afghan or wherever it is you had to go?
So the KC-10, we didn't go into Afghanistan. We were going down to Qatar is where we're the intermediary. So they brought them from Afghanistan and Qatar. Me personally, I did it, I'll call it 2.5 times, because the first time we turned around because there was some confusion. But I did 2 trips with other refugees. And then I don't know the total number of sorties, but the total number of refugees for the KC-10 was I want to say 2,000 to 4,000 refugees.
Really interesting. Yeah, they were buzzing in all through the night, early hours of the morning. You know, we're asleep in a hotel, and you could just hear them droning in the distance, going into land at the hall there.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Do you which one of you guys do you prefer flying at night or during the day?
I'm a night flight guy.
Same.
I love night flights.
I'm gonna say daytime. I like daytime because I think, I have to look out the back of the window and connect the boom. It's nice to see what I'm doing. But I mean, of course, I could do the same thing at night. There's just a little bit more there could be more constraints at night. That's all. But both are nice. I'll prefer the day though.
I'm just a night owl. I love night.
Yeah, night flights are fun. I'm biased. There's nothing more beautiful than the inside of a cockpit at night.
Oh yeah, stars.
Nice warm glow of the panel lights and stars. It's beautiful.
Stars, and if you're lucky and you're flying, in the northern hemisphere, you might get to see some aurora borealis if you're lucky. If you're flying around Alaska or Iceland, that's super pretty at night.
Nah. Cool. What I was going to say, are we still okay for time to have a few more questions? I'd like to just double check that we're all good to carry on for a bit. Yeah, cool. I'm sure John's got a question to ask as well. From
I've got one. Yeah, I got one for Ishmael. Could you give us some idea of the training program for boom operators? How much is classroom and how much is hands-on?
That's a good question. So I'll give you my timeline, but it could definitely be different for some other boom operators that you would ask, just because of, you know, when training slots open. Of course, when I first got out of boot camp, I was assigned to go to basic aircrew fundamentals course, and that's about 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So 2 weeks of that, and then the basic boom operator course, which is in Texas, that's also 2 weeks. So basic boom operator course is usually right after basic aircrew fundamentals, and so far we're at a month, and then pretty much that's when you would get your wings. But you have to go through some other training once you actually get to your home station. So once you get to home station, you're going to go through flight safety. And for me, that was about 2 months. So flight safety is when you go on the simulator for the first time and you learn pretty much all your knobs, all your switches, all your limitations. You're going to learn exactly what it is you're going to be doing. And that's about 2 months, like I said. And after that, then you'll be assigned to your squadron. And that is where it can vary depending on what level you are when it comes to the material that you need to learn, how much hands-on experience you learn. So essentially the hands-on experience begins once you go to flight safety. But the real experience is when you get to the formal training unit. And the formal training unit is, it could vary. I mean, I think it probably on average takes about a year to get through that, because first you're going to get, you know, qualified as a boom operator for air refueling. And then after that, then you're going to get qualified on cargo handling and passenger handling. And I'd say both of those take about 6 months each. So that's why I'd say a year on average. But depending on the opportunity you have to actually physically get your hands on cargo and experience cargo, and of course the availability of instructors and evaluators to, you know, eventually test how good you are at it and make sure that you are able to be out on a mission and load some cargo, get some people on a plane, and refuel other airplanes. So in total, I would say about 1.5 to 2 years. Really.
And what was the feeling or the thoughts going through your mind that very first time you did it for real?
Oh. Wow. It honestly felt like a blur to me. It just happened so fast. I mean, so the first flight I did was basic. You know, we had another KC-10, a C-17, and my instructor, his name is Technical Sergeant Ruff. You know, it was Technical Sergeant Ruff, and that was actually his first flight as an instructor. So I was his first student on my first flight, and he was very helpful though, and very knowledgeable, and he showed me the ropes very well. But once I got in that seat and just saw that plane come up, it just happened just so fast. But I did it, and I think after is when it hit me, and I was pretty much thinking to myself, I just did it. I just did that thing. That was strange, but it was awesome.
Cool. Thank you very much. And the rest of the crew, how do you feel when you've got a newbie down back?
Bob, how do you feel?
Pretty calm for the most part. Usually they were their instructor, and we got a pretty good crew for us, so I never really feel scared of my boom operators. They usually communicate what's going on pretty well.
Yeah. I've only worried once, and that's because this particular boom operator had never been deployed. It was his first deployed flight. He had never been outside of the United States. He's now not with an instructor. And we handed him the radios. We don't really hand him the radios. We just say, hey, you have the radios. I'm not going to talk on the radios. You're going to talk on the radios. and I'm just going to sit here and listen. That's what we mean by handing off the radios. So I say, hey, you have the radios, and he doesn't say a thing. And the fighter's right behind us, ready to get gas. And I'm like, on interphone, not on the radio, on the interphone. Hey, you doing okay? Yeah, I'm just getting set. Yeah. I'm like, oh no, he's losing his mind back there. So for the first couple flights, we had to kind of walk him through the radio calls again. But yeah, that's the only time I ever worried. But it was good. He grew a lot that deployment. He really did, and now he's a fantastic boom operator.
I will say that the first deployment is usually where communication is built upon, because I'll say the same thing for my first deployment. I was not good with, communicating over the radios, because it's a very real thing, but also there's certain what's the word?
Lingo.
There's lingo you need to learn. You have to say things in a certain manner so that you can actually hear what somebody says over the radio. Because sometimes it comes in muffled. Sometimes they say something so fast you don't even understand what they say. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking over a radio, you can't just say, hey, I didn't hear you. Can you repeat that? It's too much. You have to kind of, learn your brevity terms, right?
Yeah.
And you say things like repeat last transmission. That's just the small things that you got to learn. And personally, that's how I learned when I was deployed. It was a lot of trial and error, and my pilots were laughing at me because I didn't know what I was doing. It's just what happens.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
How do you guys feel when it's a new co-pilot and he's learning how to fly the jet and just smacks it right into the runway?
It hurts my back. But no, it's it's learning for everyone. We're continually learning. We're always learning something.
I'll be honest, I've sent some co-pilots up there especially during the FTU. I'm not the instructor pilot. I'm just sitting on the jet. And I know that they're going to go up there, and I'm like, oh man, this landing is going to be rough. And I'll just right before the landing, I'm like, ooh, and there it is. Okay, cool. We're done. So I just don't want it to hurt my back.
So the question I've got is Gabriel. Have I got that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So prior to you flying the KC-10, what types of aircraft? Obviously, it's going to be the usual ones, but what sort of ones have you flown before you got to the KC-10? And in total, how many flying hours do you have on the KC-10?
Ooh. I've got 1,300 hours in the 10 and only 1,500 total, because I did not fly before my Air Force career. I didn't think I was going to be a pilot. I didn't want to be a pilot when I was growing up. I kind of just went to the Air Force Academy because it was free, and I didn't want my mom to pay for my education. And they're like, hey, you can be a history major and a pilot. And I was like, sure, I don't believe you, but I'm going to try anyways. And then they gave me pilot wing, like a pilot slot. I was like, cool. So then I went to Colorado and I did 2 or 3 months. It's supposed to be a 2-month program, but because of weather, it ended up for me 3 months. You fly the DA-20. It's a Diamond aircraft, just a small training aircraft. They teach you the basics there. What is an elevator? What is a rudder? What are ailerons? This makes cows go fast. This makes cows go slow. Cows get bigger. Cows get smaller. Cows get bigger. Stuff like that. Then I went back to Mississippi and I did my whole year of pilot training. So my first 6 months was in the T6 Texan, which is, is that a Beechcraft? It might not be a Beechcraft. It might be a Beechcraft, but T6 Texan, look it up, Wikipedia, it knows everything. And then from there, I went to the T1A Jayhawk, which is just it looks like a small private jet. And that's where you learn kind of crew coordination, flying with a co-pilot and a pilot. And you learn about how checklists flow like that, radio calls. And then after that, I went straight to the KC-10. So I haven't flown a lot. you know, there's other pilots in the community that have gone out and flown C-21s, some that have come from other aircraft such as C-17s or C-5s. I'm one of the younger in the community, but there are definitely some other guys that have just flown the KC-10 their whole career, and that's cool too.
But all that matters is you fly a KC-10. So yeah,
That matters.
that's all that matters. So here we are. Great, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, and the Texan is built by Beach Textron, and it's based on the Pilatus PC-9.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
He was looking on Wikipedia. He was. kidding.
I was reading an article about the PC-21, its successor, and he'd actually mentioned that in passing. So,
Yeah.
Gentlemen, going back to your talking about staying at bases while aircraft is being repaired, it strikes to me the bases in this country, you know, Milton or Fairford, it'd be a good idea to have a word with the public affairs people and say, why don't you get a pool of people who volunteer, you know, there's a lot of us aircraft fanatics who are willing to do it, to take you guys out for an evening to a pub, you know, what we call a pub, have a meal, talk about aeroplanes, take you back to the base, and give you a break from sitting in the base and going to the, you know, the base exchange. And I say it will mean the public affairs offices advertising this thing locally to volunteers, and you know, they could when you land the base what's the name, affairs, call a person, say, look, we got a crew, can you take them out for the evening or something like that? How about that?
I like this idea. I like this idea a lot. You should reach out to Lakenheath and Mildenhall and offer your services. If not, I'm gonna keep Matt's number, and the next time I'm in England, I'm gonna give him a ring.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea.
Yeah, I think so too.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah, of course.
And guys, can I ask a question off the back of that? I'm going back a bit now. You said obviously the places you've been and the places, you know, you went to Japan, but unfortunately COVID stopped you enjoying the country. And there's a few of us on here that have been lucky enough to go to Japan, and it is a fantastic country, as you say, the food, the people, everything. But when you're tasked as a crew to go on and deploy, do you have a bit of choice because you're a small community to say, well, actually, I like to go here because I've never been there before? Or do you just get, this is the machine you're flying, this is the job you're doing, and you just be lucky that you may go back to Japan someday? Does that make sense? Can you ask to go somewhere, or do you not get that choice?
It depends. I mean, it's kind of whatever comes down the barrel, and if we get missions to go places, if people want to go, they can ask the scheduler, hey, I haven't been to Ramstein before, can I go on that trip? And they can jump on the trip and go. But in terms of like planning a mission to go places just because you want to go there, that's not really a thing we can do. It's just working with the people that schedule flights to get on a flight you want to go on, which we all know each other, so it happens a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. And sorry.
No, I was gonna say, you know, just keep checking the schedule and be friends with your schedulers. That's the best way. Yeah, these guys are both schedulers. That's the best way to get what you want. And then also try not to have a life. Don't have hobbies. Don't make plans at home. Don't get married. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm being real, because there's so many times where I want to go on a trip because it's going to a location I've never been to, but you know, oh, my family's in town and I can't go because it would be really rude if my mom flew in. And I was like, you know what, Mom? There's this really cool trip going to, I don't know, lodges in the Azores. I'm going to go there instead. So, it's just working, you know, luck and timing.
Yeah, understand. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Going back to the 130s and that, you said that the 130s would refuel helicopters. and you would possibly refuel the 130s. Would you ever sort of refuel the 130s or sort of pass your fuel to the 130s so that they can pass it to the helicopters?
I think that, yeah, I think if the mission required us to do that, we could definitely do it. We just can't do it at the same time. You can't have a KC-10, a C-130, and then 2 helicopters all in a row. You can't do it at the same time. But yeah, I mean, if the mission dictated us to fly a C-130, give him gas so that he could fly a little bit farther to get to the helicopter, I don't see like why that wouldn't be a mission. It could definitely be a possibility. I've never done it.
Thank you.
Can I just ask the pilot? You talked us through your progression in pilot training early from the T6 to the T1 and all the rest of it. How do you find that progression going from a predominantly a single seat aircraft up to having the crew to manage, and then all the way up to flying a KC-10, which is just huge in comparison to everything before?
Training. I mean, just sheer training. Like, we're very well trained and we have really good instructors here. And I flew, I've never flown a single seat. I've always had an instructor in the aircraft. But my instructors kind of brought me up in that aircraft, and then I moved on to bigger aircraft. And from the T6 to the T1, there wasn't much of a difference. I thought that it was a very easy transition, but from going from the T1 to the KC-10, that was a huge transition because, you know, the T1's pretty close to the ground. The KC-10's 27 feet up in the air. The T1 has 2 engines. They're both rear mounted. The KC-10 has 2 underwing engines and 1 in the rear on the tail. So that's a big difference. It's, I mean, what, 10 times? No, way more than 10 times heavier. Factor of like 50 times heavier than the T1. The KC-10 can take off with 590,000 pounds. That's more than 500,000 pounds. That's a big aircraft. It has a lot of wires. It has a lot of circuit breakers. And then the crew, it's completely different. I'd never flown with a flight engineer before. I'd never flown with a boom operator before. I'd never had to lead them before. And the training that we did in the simulators really did set me up for success, that when I was in the aircraft, it felt natural, to be honest. And our simulator training initially is 3 months long, and you learn a whole bunch of things. You learn about the aircraft, you learn about the systems, you learn how to fly the aircraft, you learn the emergencies in the aircraft. They start taking wings away. No, I'm just kidding. They start taking engines and throwing them on fire. They'll take hydro systems away from you. They'll take certain electronic things away from you, and they'll be like, deal with it, figure it out, make a safe landing somewhere. So that's a big part of the sim. And then I think another big part of the sim is the communication aspect. So when I was flying in the sim, I had a pilot instructor and I had a boom instructor, and well, no, I didn't have a boom instructor, but the pilot instructor acted like a boom. And then I had an engineer instructor as well. So they really did hammer into us crew CRM, which is a cockpit resource management, or that's just a fancy way of saying how to communicate with other people that you work with. So yeah, I work in the sim at a very early stage in my KC-10 career. I'm learning how to communicate with an engineer, and I'm learning how to communicate with the boom operator. So it was a big transition, I think, from pilot training, but it was a transition that I think went very smoothly because of the training and how it's set up. Hopefully that answered your question. If I totally just said something way off, let me know.
So I've got a question. So is there ever a country that you'd like to be on exercise on, or that you'd like to go and visit? We spoke about previous countries you've been to that were sort of your favourite, but is there somewhere that you've not been yet that you'd really like to do, whether it's doing an exercise with allies or just in general being in another country? Is there something that you really like? Do you know what? I fancy that. I fancy the beers there, or not just the beers, but and fancy going there doing a bit of a, what do you
Yeah.
reckon?
Czech. You want to go to Czech?
I want to go to Prague,
Oh wow, I've been to Prague. It's pretty good. I haven't been in the
Yeah.
KC-10.
but more realistic would be Italy for me.
Oh yeah,
Never been to Italy.
that'd be good.
Oh, I don't know.
You can think. I want to go to Australia because I haven't gone to Australia in the KC-10. It is a place that sometimes we have the opportunity to go, whether it's an exercise or we're doing some training. I haven't been able to go, and I really want to try. Before I leave the KC-10 community, I want to do that at least once.
I'll also say Australia. I've never been. I've never been in. And every time, I talk to somebody that has been on a trip, when they get back, they're like a totally different person. Like
They're tanner.
They're tanner.
Eat Vegemite.
They're happier. They're like, I had the best time of my life there. I'm like, really? Did you? Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Okay. So if that's the case, then it's Robert, isn't it? The flight engineer.
Okay.
Is that correct? Right. You chose Italy, but you didn't say why. There's got to be a reason.
I'm from upstate New York. My last name is Romano, so I kind of have some Italian heritage. And I don't know, I just always wanted to go to Italy. I like Italian food. Yeah,
Good.
a lot of Italian things that would be fun to try.
Nice. Okay, that's answered my questions.
Another one that we used to go in the KC-10 a lot, but we don't go anymore in Singapore. Because there's not a lot of Southeast Asian countries we land at a lot, but Singapore is one of them. But we haven't gone there in a minute. And I remember being in scheduling and never seeing it, but always hearing about the stories.
Yeah, Poland's another one that'd be cool to go to.
Yeah, Poland. Yeah. There's a lot of countries. There's a lot of countries to see. It'd be cool. We're blessed. We're definitely blessed.
Question for the flight engineer. Could I have a quick word? We all know about the history of the DC-10 from its life. Its unfortunate early life, mainly put down to the cargo doors coming off, because they opened outwards rather than inwards, that sort of thing. I presume that the KC-10 has got all those features where the doors fail safe and things like that. Am I right?
Yep. So the cargo door we have has two redundant locks on it that latch. I have lights on my panel that show if they popped open or if they're indicating open. But to my knowledge, the KC-10 has had no cargo door issues.
That's what it is. Yeah. Yes, it was a sad start, really, wasn't it? The aircraft.
Yeah. Sure.
Can she fly on one end? Can she fly on one engine?
Yes.
Depending on obviously weight.
Yeah. Depending on the weight, you can fly on one engine. Now you can't take off with just one engine operating. That would be illegal. You need to have 3 engine operating unless you're doing something really out of the ordinary and your jet has one broken engine, but it's stuck in, I don't know, North Dakota, and there's no maintenance personnel anywhere near that can get to North Dakota. There could be a 2-engine ferry flight, but that is very rare. I've never seen it happen. I've only read it in my textbook. But yeah, usually 3 engines taking off, and then if you lose 2 engines, you can still fly.
Yeah, it's part of the sim.
Yeah.
You're doing single engine flights.
Yeah.
I've not really done my research on the KC-10, even though I love it, hence why I sort of arranged this talk today. But obviously you've got the 2 engines on the wings. The one at the top that's obviously a different type of engine, right? Or is it the same?
It's just has a really long cowl.
It's the same engine. It's just because, do you know, like when you see them dangling down on the wings, I call them dangling bits, compared to where it is at the back, you think that's a different type. I mean, it might be a stupid comment for me, but if you, as a person that takes photos and that, I've always looked at it as a question. I could have easily Googled it, but it looked like it was like a different engine on there. But obviously, if you're saying it's the same one.
Yep. Only difference is it doesn't have a pneumatic source coming off of it.
Cool.
Oh, cool. Well, that answers that. So it wasn't too stupid.
Common question.
That was a question I had when I first got on the 10.
Yeah.
Hi guys, can I ask another question? Obviously, you may not know this, and obviously it's going to be a sad time when I think it's September next year, isn't it, when you're going to stop flying the KC-10. I know the first one went into, I think, Dover Air Force Base to the museum. Is there any chance you're going to preserve one actually at Travis, or is it too a big aircraft to preserve, if that makes sense, rather than sort of fighter size, etc.?
I don't know if there is a plan to do one at Travis. I've heard there's a chance that there could be another museum bird. I don't know where that one's going, but I think Dover right now is the only museum bird that we have. The one at Dover is actually the 79-433 was the first production KC-10 ever made, and that's now the AMC Museum at Dover.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And on that sort of note about obviously September next year, are you planning, or is there any scope for any kind of farewell air show or something to sort of commemorate such a great sterling service that it's done in USAF over the years? Or
I haven't heard anything like an air show, but I know there's been a lot of talk of a lot of heritage type events leading up to the final divestment of the KC-10.
Yeah. Sorry to ask such a sad question, obviously, with it going out of service, I do apologise, but it is, as Matt has said, it's a great bird, and been lucky enough to see it many a times at Fairford over the years, and this sort of like when it supported Libya, seeing sort of 9 of them down there, which is fantastic. So although I must say I don't like your colour scheme, I'd rather have the nice the blue white, which obviously it looked fantastic. So but cheers guys. Yeah.
Yes.
On that note, if it's going in September, they're retiring. I mean, Fairford 2024 is in July. So can't you guys speak to whoever's in charge and send one over? Because we had an air tanker theme this year, and I was waiting for some, announcement saying a KC-10 was coming. And whether you're busy, as you said, you're very unique unit sort of thing. But to top it off, surely they've got to send one to RIAT next year, because the US bring everything.
I will say it's not as complicated to get a military aircraft to an air show as you might think it is. I've been to a couple air shows and been a part of planning them. Honestly, and you're gonna think I'm crazy, but we literally just had a guy email the person in charge here at Travis and said, "Hey, we'd love to have a KC-10 come to our air show in Kansas. Would you guys support?" And then the person who's in charge of scheduling all the KC-10s here at Travis just sent it to the squadrons and said, "Does anyone want to do it?" And we said yes, and then we went, and it's as easy as that. So if you know the person who's in charge of coordinating air shows for the specific air show that you're speaking to, talk to the scheduler and say, hey, have you reached out to the Travis KC-10? And it is easy as an email or a phone call. We love to support those things.
Yeah. Going back to reserving one at Travis, of course, you got a very good museum on base, haven't you? And on one of the roundabouts, you got to say 141. I'm sure you can find another roundabout on base, don't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Be a big roundabout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a couple aircraft on a couple roundabouts. Now that I think about it, there's another cargo aircraft next to the commissary and that I don't know what that aircraft is. A lot older, but yeah.
Yes, two of us on the call actually went round Travis a few years ago, and really just to visit the museum.
Oh, nice.
I'm trying to remember what the other preserved aircraft is, other than the museum itself.
Yeah.
Which is a very good museum, I must say.
I'm glad. Glad you enjoyed. Oh, we got Matt back.
I'm cheating. I'm looking at Google Maps. It looks like a DC-6, but it's hard to say.
I apologise for that. I was asking a question. You were responding to me, and then my doorbell went. So I had to quickly dash off to it.
Can I just ask how you came about joining the Air Force? Obviously, we heard that you obviously went to the college so you could get free education, but just wondering how it kind of come about. Did the rest of you want to be in the Air Force, or did you just stumble over it just during life?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I kind of always wanted to as a kid. I'm from upstate New York, and I remember, just always wanting to do it. My brother-in-law went to West Point when I was in grade school, and I always remember going to West Point, seeing him there, and then I just always wanted to join the Air Force. So when I was in high school, I joined, and it's all I've really wanted to do, I guess. It's cool.
Yes. For me, I said earlier that I had joined a little bit later when I was older, when I was 25. So I graduated high school, and for a few years, I tried college. It just wasn't working for me at the time. I think, paying for college and just kind of making it work, being an adult, a young adult at that, there was just some things I didn't understand. So I found myself in some difficult situations at times. And eventually, once I hit 24, 25, I just couldn't go to school anymore. I couldn't afford it. So I've tried to figure out what else I could do. And I decided that, well, maybe I don't need to be kind of in control for a while. Maybe I just need to figure it out. I just need to figure it out. And eventually, I stumbled across some YouTube videos about the Air Force and what it means to be in the Air Force, the benefits. And I talked to a recruiter. The recruiter had some good things to say, and she thought I was pretty capable and qualified. So next thing I know, I'm at the MEPS office in New Jersey at McGuire, and I'm getting sworn in. So it just kind of happened. But I feel like it was meant to happen. I just feel like it was meant to happen, and I'm in an incredible spot right now.
Nice. Thank you.
Yes. Just done a bit of looking up. That other aircraft is a C-54. That's on base. Actually, ex-US Navy, but won't say more about that. Yes.
I've got a quick question. Do you carry different fuel for the Navy lot? Because they don't like your fuel, do they?
No. So we pretty much carry the same JPA, JA fuel all the time, but we do have the capability to carry dissimilar fuel in one of our tanks. But that feature is not really used anymore.
And also, what's your call signs? And what's the story behind them?
Well, for boom operators, recently, this is not even a month, our leadership asked us, do you want call signs as boom operators? And most of us rejected the idea because I think the process of going about getting a call sign, it has to be natural almost. Like you can't manufacture a call sign. It just has to be something that you did on the plane that was kind of embarrassing, or some odd nickname. We voted against having call signs because it just wasn't, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's in our culture, specifically in the KC-10 community. I mean, not that I'm aware of, but I mean, unless you've had different experiences.
I agree. I just don't think I've never had one. I don't have one. I don't think it's just not a part of our culture. Pilots, I think most pilots usually it's part of their upbringing maybe, but
Yeah, like pilot training, you get a call sign. But in the KC-10 community and at large, I haven't met too many people with a call sign that they actually go by. And usually if it is a call sign that they go by, it's something very similar to their name. So most people just go by their first name. So yeah, I have a call sign from pilot training. It's Samsonite. If you were curious, it's from a Dumb and Dumber movie because I said the wrong ATIS identifier when I was talking to ground, and there's just like a Dumb and Dumber quote where he goes, Samsonite. Oh, I was way off. That's how I got it. I have another call sign that I recently got that my new squadron commander called me by. He says Gasman instead of Gabe, because I was part of an exercise where I was in control of 4 unlike aircraft. I was in control of the 135-46 KC-10, so I was in control of all the gas. Gasman. So they call me the Gasman. Literally, he does not call me anything else but Gasman. It's pretty cool.
Excellent. Thank you.
Gasman. No one else calls me
Back
Gasman.
Back in 1993, I spent a couple of nights at Ramstein, and the first night we met a group of girls and played 10-pin bowling with them, and they were a C-141 crew, and they were all ladies. Now, rooting for the ladies, do you still have all lady crews? And well, not necessarily on the DC, on the KC-10s, but on other aircraft.
Yes. Yep. We have women flying all the aircraft in the Air Force, and especially during what is it? I don't know what month, I forget what month it is, but like Women's Month.
Women's Heritage.
Yeah, Women's Heritage Month. We'll usually throw a KC-10 together, a crew, and it's just all women, and then they go fly a mission. So
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were very nice people. We had a lovely evening with them, and they flew at I think they flew at 4 o'clock in the morning. We were still sleeping.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
So I've got a question from Ishmael. Hope I got that right again. Yep. Really. Have you ever considered being a boom operator on a 135?
Well, when we were going through, when I was in basic boom operator course, down in Lackland Air Force Base, we got the option to choose which aircraft to go to, actually based off of which Air Force Base you were going to go to. So if you were going to go to, let's say, what's the one in Tacoma?
Washington.
McCord. If I chose to go to McCord, Washington, then I would be on a 135. Or if I chose to go to McGuire, then I would have been on a KC-10. So I think it came down more to location, really. And I've always wanted to live in California because, I grew up on the East Coast. I was tired of the snow, the rain. I kind of missed the rain. I missed that. But I chose California. I like California, and it's just a nice place to be. So I think looking at a 135, I'd probably say I wouldn't want to fly on a 135. No offense to the 135 boom operators, but I get to sit in a chair. I don't want to lay down. I just want to sit down.
That's fair enough. So obviously we've discussed about your careers and stuff, but I like to now and then ask a question. What are your hobbies, you guys? Like, what do you do sort of outside of it? I mean, what keeps you sort of, outside of the sort of work area? Just quite interested to know what's your hobbies? What do you enjoy doing?
Well, So I've got a new hobby. Okay. All right. Don't make fun of me. Okay. I rollerblade. I'm a rollerblader.
That's pretty cool.
I hit the rollerblades. I just got some. You know, I put my helmet on, make sure I'm safe. Okay. And I just rollerblade. I mean, it's good exercise too. It's a little fun. I put, you know, some headphones on. I put some nice music on, and I just rollerblade. Usually around the evening time, a little, well, maybe more sunset time, just because it's not as hot, and it's just nice feeling the air, the breeze hit you while you're, you know, going pretty fast on a sidewalk. It's nice. That's my hobby.
Nice. I've got a couple hobbies. Jack of all trades, master of none. Let's see. I played guitar since I was 6, and I picked up piano in December of 19, and I have a baby grand in my house. So I like to tickle the ivories when I can. I garden. I like to take care of my house in general. Cleaning. I like a clean house, so that's like a whole hobby in and of itself. Let's see. I participate in a church, a local church, so I'll actually lead worship services with the guitar and the piano. And then I like to play video games. I don't get to do that as often as I would like, because usually I'm working these days a lot. So, but when I do get to sit down, I like to turn on the PS5 and play some Call of Duty. Yes, you know, if anybody wants to pass my gamer tag, ask Matt, because I don't remember what it is. And then I'll email it to Matt.
I like photography, hiking, camping, like motorcycles. I don't have one right now, but looking to get another one. But yeah.
Do your training.
That's nice. Nice to see. Because because talking, obviously that was hobbies and stuff. I mean, as I said, I've hosted so many of these talks now, and I hosted, aside of hobbies in that, I hosted 2 tornado pilots, former RAF tornado pilots, and one of them displayed at air shows and stuff. One didn't, and they're completely 2 different people. So it just shows how it was. Because one said, "I'm not interested in displaying at air shows. I'm interested in doing my job." And the other one was like, "I enjoy showing off in front of the crowds at the shows." So you had they flew the same aircraft, pretty much trained on the same aircraft, but completely different people. And then when you brought their hobbies in, they had completely different hobbies as well. So that's why I thought I'd ask that in, because it's quite, interesting to see what people are doing. Rollerblading is fine. I mean, there's so many people I know that still do it, sort of thing. So people are into sort of different things. There's a lot of photographers here. There's chairs of museums and stuff. There's cadets and stuff like that here. So it's everyone's all sort of deep into the aviation sort of thing. So I just thought I'd ask that question in there. But yeah, it's got great hobbies, all of you. Well done.
Thank you.
Has anyone got any further questions? Or we all questioned out?
That's about 10 your guys' time, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got to say, you've been very generous with your time. You've given us 2 hours, which is, it's just brilliant, because when I organise these talks, I always say an hour and a half. I'll call it 90 minutes, but it's, I always ask for that amount of time, because it's the questions and stuff afterwards. Because when the pilots, or crew talk about themselves, and that sometimes some take 20 minutes, some take 4, some take 2, but it's the questions afterwards. But I've got to say, this has been one of my favourites. This has been fantastic. You guys are, very energetic, very enthusiastic about your job role. And I just want to say thank you for sparing us 2 hours this evening, or UK time, asking you questions and just, listening to you about the wonderful KC-10.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's I tried a while to get a KC-10 crew, because I had a KC-135, and then we had a Force 6 pilot, but I wasn't able to secure, like an engineer and a boom operator as well as that. So this was the icing on the cake for me to have 3 of you here. It was just brilliant. So unless anyone's got any other further questions, I just want to say thank you again for giving up your time, speak to us tonight. It's been brilliant, and all the best for whatever you're going to do.
Enjoy your lunch. Enjoy your lunch.
Thank you very much.
You deserve it.
Thank you.
Yeah, cheers guys. Thanks a lot. Much appreciated.
Thank you.